Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, whatever part of the world you are tuned in from. This is Funny Like a Clown podcast, November 16th, 2021. This is episode 131. As always, today's episode is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. For the spicy, sweet, savory taste at game time, there is only one G Vegas, available at www.gvegas.webs.com. Get it shipped to your door. Go green, go fresh. We do comedy, and I've been telling you guys for a while about a movie I've been working on. So for a special treat today, I have writer, director, producer, actor, best known for his work with Smoking Bottle Entertainment, kicking out films like Space People 1 and 2, Revenge of the Animals, the Cartoon Man trilogy, and the musical Choirwood. Adam Griswold, welcome to the show.
Hi, good to be here.
Well, thank you for being on, and I usually start at the beginning, okay, because that's the best place to start, is the beginning of someone's career. But we're going to double back to the beginning, and we're going to start from a little bit further in your career. I met you early on in your career, and we did a couple of projects together. Then I approached you about a script I was working on, and called The World Needs a New Superhero, which we recently just completed. So I wanted to plug that first off. So when I first sent you over the script and you read it, what were your first impressions of the script?
I think my first thought was that well, this is a lot to pull off, because I mean I know I've had a lot of experience. I know you didn't have a lot of experience producing this. It's like, wow, you have all these locations, all these people, and I know from doing it that it is hard to
Right.
get all that together. So I was like, well, I don't know. I wonder, are we going to do it, or is this going to get scaled back? And now that it's done, it's like, wow, we actually did it. We got every scene in there.
You thought I was biting off a little more than I could chew. I thought that too, especially with the
we all are. I've bitten off more than I can chew multiple times.
Okay, so you knew what was going on. So I mean, I mean, to compare it to some other films, I mean, each film you do is different, but I mean, if you had to compare it to some other ones, what were your thoughts in comparison to what you had done so far?
What I've done so far, I don't know. There's also different. I mean, it was like, because I don't think I've ever done anything with like that many. I mean, it was kind of similar to like maybe not quite on the level of like somewhere between like the Cartoon Man and Revenge of the Animals and Space People for me. Like, I don't know. And they're also different,
Everyone's a
It's
new
like,
challenge, right? Yeah.
yeah, everything is. It's like, it didn't have as many special effects as some of the ones I've done, but it's like, I don't know if I've ever done anything where there were like that many different locations and like, so many people who, I mean, it's like you only have like a couple of main characters, but then there's like a lot of, bit parts
Side
where you'd have to get
characters,
people,
yeah.
it's like I'll usually have kind of maybe a smaller group of people with bigger parts. So it's, every project's different.
Right. Okay. So we recently completed it, as you just mentioned, after over a year in the process of pulling off all these locations. So now that it's finished, what are your thoughts on it now?
It's cool. It's coming out good. I think
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm just like, I think I have like really just one more scene left to edit, and it's just like for the past couple weeks, it's been cool just seeing like, because this thing is, for over a year, I've had this thing that's like all these pieces, and now it's like finally I'm plugging in all the holes, and it's starting to actually flow together, and you're able to really see what the story is. And
Right. I noticed that too when you were sending over like broken scenes. It was kind of like tough to follow, but the more scenes that you put in there, it starts to get a flow, and it looks
so now it's like,
more So with
I think
everything,
like
it should be very understandable, right?
yeah.
Okay. So I mean, you've done them before, so I mean, I plan on doing like a local showing, and I know you've done some theater local showings. Well, how do those usually work out for you?
Um, it depends. Sometimes it's like, you try as best you can to get a date that works for everybody, and sometimes you get a big turnout, and then sometimes it's like you don't get as big a turnout just because
Kind of
it's
like comedy. Okay.
you try to do what works for people, but it's like people have stuff come up, and I've had a couple that that were really good, where where a lot of people in the cast invited their friends, and we were able to have pretty good showings. So
those are the nights you live for. Then you get through the rough nights where not many people show up, right? But so I know you've entered some of your films in local film festivals. What are some of the awards you've won and stuff doing film festivals?
I've got the last several films I've finished have all been in festivals. It was like first Well, Revenge of the Animals was in kind of a small one in New Hampshire, and then like Space People was the one that was I think was in the most festivals. That was in like the Boston Science Fiction Film Festival, in Boston Comic Con, and then a few others. Yeah, there was a festival in Southern California that's shown a few of my films, and they've given me a couple awards for like best ensemble for Space People 2 and Apocalypse Party. And let's say, and then Lights Camera Terror was in a couple of festivals, and that won one for best comedy at the Shawnish Spring Shorts Festival. And Choirwood, the musical, that was in a couple. That was in another
You like
festival.
coast to coast, but you're from New England to LA and California and everything, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, mostly just local festivals and ones in California so far. I
Sure,
think there was
nothing in between.
maybe one in Miami that the first Space People was in, but yeah, we'll see what happens because
Okay, all right. So, I mean, I plan on putting The World Needs a New Superhero in some film festivals and having a local showing. So I'm kind of
yep.
following the footsteps of what you've already done. So I just want to get your impressions. But all right. So I said we'll go back to the beginning now. Now that we got that plug in and what we've been working on lately. But you're a graduate of Emerson College, okay? And you went there for what? Film directing, or what was the
Well, just film production, I think.
film production? And I talked to you a little bit about it. You said that was kind of more about working on like major films than it was local ones, right?
Yeah, to an extent. Yeah, it felt like, I mean, I was there from like 2006 through 2009, 2010, and they were kind of, yeah, their whole approach was very like, this is how to work in the Hollywood system, which I mean independent film at then was probably very different from how it was now. I think the technology for people without much of a budget to even make films was kind of just emerging, so they were kind of, it felt like they were a little behind where things were at that point. So yeah, it was kind of very much about, yeah, how the like whole Hollywood industry works more than anything independent.
All right. So what inspired you to want to take that course in college? What made you want to take that?
I was in, when I was in high school starting to look towards college, I was already starting to make films, just like, some of them would just be like but I mean, even before that, I just always would picture movies in my head. So once I got to the point where I was in high school and had the opportunity to make movies, like it would be like for like history class, they'd be like an assignment where you would, present your, do some research and then make a video about some topic. And then eventually I got a camera, and like in the summer breaks, my brother and my cousins would film stuff. We just kind of make up these silly stories as we went along, and I'd film them and then edit it together. And so it's something I've always been interested in my whole life.
So
And
from an
so it was
early
just,
age, you found this was
yeah,
your
so
passion.
once I was
Okay.
looking at college, it was like, obviously, yeah, this is what I want to do.
Right. Now I know, at least when I went to school, I don't know, the kids who put in the effort, those were the ones who got made fun of. I mean, did you ever catch any flack for being the guy who had to get like the biggest project done or anything? Or were the kids more appreciative of what you did, or did they give you any
But
trouble? Or
generally were impressed. I'd
yeah,
kind of, because
supportive, yeah.
yeah, I'd really kind of, yeah, because it would be like, whatever class we'd show all the videos, and people would always be excited for mine because they'd be really funny, and I'd do all kinds
Put the
of
extra
stuff.
effort in, right? Okay.
Yeah, and so there were always only like a few people in any class who really kind of had that,
Yeah, yeah, the extra
creativity.
drive, right? So
Yeah.
now, do you find that you still tap onto some of what you learned in there, or in those classes, doing what you're doing now, the local, small budget films, or
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know, I think I learn from everything I do. It's like, even, I mean, even like working on your film, it's, nice. It was almost nice to have the opportunity to do something where, you were taking care of, putting the whole thing together, getting
right,
most of the people in locations. And it's like, I can just kind of focus on, filming and editing,
what
and
you
just
had to do?
almost,
Yeah.
so I can get better. It's easy for me to get better at that. So then when I go and do my own films, I learn from everything. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
I say that too. Each one you do, you learn something new on
yeah,
it.
it's like I
You're
look back at
constantly
stuff
learning.
yeah,
Huh.
just like look back at stuff from like a couple years ago, and it's like, well, I feel like I've, grown since then.
You're
So it's a
constantly growing in the
constant
business,
process.
right? So what? I mean, once you graduated the college, what made you, instead of going on to pursue, say, the Hollywood big stuff, what made you open your own smoking bottle entertainment and choose to do your own thing on a smaller budget? But I mean, you're in control. It's a smaller thing, but you're the man.
Partly, I mean, it was partly just, I mean, it was, the economy was in bad shape, and it was hard to find a job,
Okay.
or like make enough money to, move anywhere else. And so while I was trying to find work, I just started, meeting people, and I before I could really find any real paid work, I just started getting involved with some local productions that people were doing, and started meeting people, and meeting people who also wanted to make their own short films. And so that was kind of like, I latched onto that, like, this is so cool, I can just do my own stuff. And just within about a year or so, I began doing my own films. And
Yeah, it's fun when you meet people who have the same interests as you, because you kind of connect with them because you have a similar interest. But what was that like for you? I know when I first met you, I remember, I think it was on Craigslist that you would put a listing, and I remember I read yours, and luckily you had a link to your website, which showed me you were serious. And I got out of there, and there was like the next link below was some lady like, beware of local productions. If you walk into someone's cellar with a beach towel hanging up, it's not a professional. I'm like, what the hell did this lady walk into? But I mean, did you ever have an awkward experience like trying to find people to work with, or?
uh, it's always a little awkward. I mean, it's just because I've gotten a lot better over the years, but when I was starting out, I was really kind of like nervous about having to meet people, and
Right.
really scared when I was like, I'm having to audition, having to have people show up and audition. Like, I did all my early auditions in like just the Starbucks, like the one where I first met you, because
Yeah, we
it
know
was
that.
easier than having to go, like, I don't want to have to go rent a place and ask for permission, and I just want to kind of do a casual thing. And
Right, right,
it
right.
was just like, yeah, but it's like, oh, it's like, and there's on both ends, there's like, I'm thinking, what are people going to think of me? But ended up, it worked out. I've met a
I was just
lot
gonna
of
say it
people
worked out because
like
you
that.
got a
Yeah,
pretty good
yeah,
cast of people you can turn to if you're making a project that are interested now, right? You kind of worked your way up
yeah. At
to.
this point, yeah, I don't haven't really. It's been years since I've done like a big casting call like I used to,
Right.
because now it's like I'll draw from the people the people I've worked with before, but then also I work on so many other projects that I'll meet people on those, and then become friends on Facebook. And so then, if I need extra people, I can just post, hey, I'm looking for people. And
The network keeps
I found
growing.
it, I mean, especially within the last few years, it's a lot easier for me to find people than it ever used to be.
Okay, so let's take it back to 2012. Murder by Upload, was that the first project you worked on with
The
like other
Dolce tapes was
people's
the first one, and the Murder by
document
Upload was
tapes?
the
Okay, that
second.
was in 2012 too.
They
So
were, yeah.
so
I
the
think, yeah,
document takes bring us back to that time. This is your first project that you're working on under your that you're in charge of. I mean, what was that like putting it together? Did we
it was, well,
scared,
at
nervous,
first,
excited?
yeah, it was weird because it was like, at first, I wasn't putting it together completely by myself. I had a few people helping out, but then it came to a point where they had some scheduling issues, and so they had to drop out, and so I did have to do it on my own. And yeah, I mean, I was definitely nervous at first, especially like I said, with having to cast people. But it was, yeah, it was like, it was weird because I was all the actors in that were people who I've worked with many times since then, but at the time I didn't know them. I
Didn't know him,
just
right?
met them like the month before we were filming. So it was like, oh boy, I'm like meeting people I don't even know, and we're just kind of doing this really low budget movie. But they were great, and everyone had a great time, and it just, that gave me a lot of confidence. It's like, hey, I pulled this off. I got this
Yeah.
really simple movie done. I'm gonna go do more. And so I really just never stopped. I kind of, for the last
Kept going,
10
yeah.
years, I've just been going and going.
First one I did, I thought it was a lot. I mean, I had never done it before, and I was on my feet all day, and my legs were aching. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'll do that again. But then when he sent over the finished product, and you see it, like, oh, I can't wait to do that again. I mean, that's
Yeah,
awesome. So once you see, the fruit of your rewards, I guess that's good. So after the document tape, was that when Murder by Upload came in? Was that the
yeah.
next
Then
one?
Murder by Upload was like, that was the one where it was like, so basically I finished the Dolce tapes. I'm like, it's like, I got to keep this going. I don't want it to just be, okay, I did one movie. It's like, all
Right.
right. So I think it was like, I
The
kind
excitement's
of,
going. I got to do this again,
yeah,
right?
I think it was like, we finished filming the Ultramog tapes. I wake up the next day, and I kind of came up with the whole premise for Murder by Upload, and then started writing the script for that, I think, like within a month, and just used most of the same people in it, and just got that out done within a couple months.
All right. So you're kicking off movies. You got a couple small ones. Then I guess still in 2012 was a busy year for you. I think you took on probably your biggest challenge at that point, the Cartoon Man, which turned into a trilogy. But I mean, that was
Yeah.
a lot of animation. That was a lot of. Nobody sees how much work goes into editing, but I know myself because I had a local TV show. But
Yeah.
What was it like going to the next level and pulling off something that scale for you as compared to
Well,
the small stuff?
I mean, I think at first I didn't necessarily think the Cartoon Man was going to be on that much bigger than the others, because originally I just conceived the one movie, which was, you know, the first Cartoon Man was relatively low key compared to where the series
Right,
went.
where it ended,
It was
right?
just kind of a 40-minute movie with 4 characters, and I wasn't even originally going to have that. I thought maybe I'd have some animation, but then when I kind of started doing tests with the animation, it came out a lot better than I expected it to. So I ended up doing this whole climactic battle at the end where two of the characters are, fighting with cartoon props, and that was just so cool that, by the time the Cartoon Man was done, I started having all these other ideas for what I could do with that universe and those characters. So that was when it expanded into a trilogy.
Okay, so that's what inspired you. This, the fun you were having pulling off
Yeah,
stuff
it was
to
just,
make a
and
second one. Okay, so it was the Cartoon Man. Then we got Return of the Cartoon Man. Which I mean, that there was more animation in that. It was still the same. Was it
yeah,
new people coming in on that, or
a few new people came in on that one.
okay? So I mean, what was like that pulling off as compared to the first one, where there was a lot more animation? Was it twice the time in editing, or I
Um,
mean,
I can't. I mean, it took a lot of work in editing,
yeah,
definitely. I mean, I was just enjoying it so much. It was just, just finally, after I'd, been wanting to do films for years, and finally being able to do these, something on that level, and just, to just, so it was just, I would spend hours putting all those special effects in, and I mean, it was a lot of work, but I enjoyed it a
it was
lot
a lot of
too.
enjoyment too.
Yeah.
All right, so then came the one in 2013 I met you on was Journey the Cartoon Man. I think that was where I played Oswald Shazikian, and
Also,
I was the one of the villains in the
the
thing. But
villain who gets built up throughout the first two films. We talk about the
you
character,
talked
and then
about right that I finally
finally meet him in the third one.
came to being, and yeah, I guess I mean, was that your goal just to stop at a trilogy? Because I mean, they had like the Star Wars trilogy, the Back to the Future trilogy. I mean,
Yeah,
it would have never occurred to do a fourth one where you just pretty much that was the end of the story of the third one.
I mean, I pretty much, yeah, I basically mapped it out. Like, I mean, after I wrote the first one was basically just written as a standalone movie, but left the door open for a lot of that more than I could do. And then I planned out the second and third as basically, completing the story arc. And I really liked the way this third one ended. And so, I mean, I occasionally have vague ideas for where it could go, but it just felt like that was such a perfect ending for the whole thing that I've
Uh,
never really wanted to go beyond that.
yeah, sure. Tom Hanks said that about Forrest Gump. He said it was just such a perfect movie. He never considered making a Forrest Gump 2 because it would have just cheapened the first one. So I mean, when you
Yeah.
do when you know when it's done, when
I
you
mean,
feel it's done,
it's like I've almost had the idea, and I don't know if I'd ever do this, but like to make a fourth Cartoon Man, but have it be like kind of tongue in cheek, that like there was no need for a fourth one, and it's just the whole thing is rehashing stuff from the previous one.
right?
Just like, I don't know.
Why ruin a good thing, right?
Yeah,
when you can.
that's the
So,
joke, is that there doesn't need to be a fourth one.
right.
Because I feel like a lot of movie series do kind of, if they're successful, they just keep continuing them on, and it's like
Yeah, like the
long
Rocky
past they
series.
tell
I
them.
love the Rocky movies, but I mean, at
Yeah.
some point, he was just beating a dead horse with the Rocky Balboa thing there, which I did like the older movies, but I mean, it was just it went on too long. All right, so 2014 comes Suburban Spies. What inspired that after the Cartoon Man to try that?
Well, it was kind of like, for one thing about that was I wanted to scale things back and do something that didn't have a lot of special effects.
Right.
But also, I think the real inspiration for that was I was realizing, I could do a lot of stuff if it was in the world of the Cartoon Man and it had all those 2D special effects, but I didn't have most of the Cartoon Man films we just shot at my house with a fairly small group of people. I mean, we were up to like 10 people by the third one, but so I wanted to start bringing more people in my network and start getting experience going out and finding more locations. Like we did scenes at a couple restaurants and at like a park in my hometown, and just kind of try to broaden the scope of it. And I feel like I focused more on that than like writing a script that I was really happy with, because I just always remember Suburban Spies as one where I just like didn't enjoy it that much, because part of it was coming off the Cartoon Man, which I did enjoy so much, but then like
Right.
going into Suburban Spies, it was kind of just like, okay, I'll do this, but it ended up being really stressful. Like it was hard to, cast for that. It was hard to find locations, and
Well, that's one of the toughest parts I found of doing this is
yeah,
like I can speak for myself that I'm reliable, but I can't speak for other people. And you're
Yeah.
basically at the mercy of other people's reliability. So
Oh yeah.
it's a
That's
stressful
something.
thing too. But you recently put out a 10-year anniversary thing where you did speak and you said you'd have trouble picking your favorite movie, but if you pick your least favorite, it would be Suburban Spies. And why
And
did you say that? Why would it be your least favorite?
it's a combination of like, I don't think it's a terrible movie, but I don't think it's great. It's just it's kind of it was part the experience of making it was just really stressful, and I just didn't feel like what we were making was even was just kind of okay. So it was
Right.
just kind of putting a lot of work into something I was never that. It
It
was just
wasn't elaborate like the cartoon, man. It was kind of a step
yeah,
down
I
after
mean, it was
doing that.
elaborate in its own way, but it felt like I just really it was a script that I just really threw together like it's like, oh, we'll do this scene. And so I think a lot of the scenes in it, the individual scenes in it, some of those are funny and are work, but it felt like it as a whole, as a movie, it never quite worked.
Didn't come
And also
together.
like I feel like I kept having to scale it back too. Because there were more characters in the first draft of the script that I just could not find people for. So I
Right.
just, all right, figure out a way to write this character out, or okay, we don't have a location that's exactly like what I wanted, so I have to change. So I feel like I wound up taking so much out of it that it just reached a point where it
Took
just
away from the
what
film.
was
Yeah.
left wasn't I
Wasn't
was
what
like
you had envisioned, right?
yeah.
Well, I mean, George Lucas made Star Wars, and I think his next big project was Howard the Duck, which kind of flopped. There was nothing
Yeah.
compared to Star Wars. So, I mean, you have your good ones, you have your
I
bad
mean, it's like
ones. But
I mean, it's I feel like though like Suburban Spies is the only film I've done where I really feel like that about though. It's like most of the others I
you're pretty
have at
happy
least
with, yeah.
I'm more or less happy, or either like had good memories of making them, or I'm happy with something about the way they came out.
All right, so we mentioned making low budget films. Basically, you make do with what you got. I mean, we're not out buying costumes for people. You ask people to dress as close as they can
Yeah.
to what you envision. I mean, as far as props, you get some cheap props. We're not spending big money on this stuff. But I know you said you had got to the point where you had some money to spend on things. So in 2015, you put out Revenge of the Animals. So take us back to that. What was it like having some money to put into your movies to start?
So well, yeah, Revenge of the Animals, yeah, some money, but still very low budget.
Right.
Um, so yeah, Revenge of the Animals was kind of like trying to again take things a little bit further, and so that was one where I really when I actually the first one I did the Dolce tapes was we were running around the woods, and I wound up walking around scouting out a lot of locations in the woods that I didn't even get to use for that one. So I always wanted to do another one where we were like lost in the woods. So I came up with Revenge of the Animals, and so yeah, for that one I spent some money. I was able to get like a better microphone to attach to my camera because like sound is one of the things that makes a huge difference. I mean, the camera I had just bought going into Suburban Spies, and I think upgrading the equipment made those films you know
Big
just
difference. Yeah.
look and
Equipment
sound
makes a
that
big
much better
difference.
than what came before. Yeah, and then the whole premise of Revenge of the Animals is that we're in the woods and we're being chased by people with guns who are wearing animal masks. So I had to go out and buy a bunch of animal masks and prop guns. And so yeah, that was probably the first thing that like I spent a good chunk of money on, just as far as props and costumes go. And it wasn't much, but that and then I think, well, in future films though I was able to do
But I
even
mean,
more.
it's a start, and it's
Yeah,
starting a bigger
that was the
direction compared to
start.
what you
Yeah,
had been doing, right? Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So then comes Space People 1 and 2 in 2016 and 17, and what inspired those to come about?
Well, it started. It was. We had. We finished Revenge of the Animals, and I was kind of like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. And Rebecca, one of the actors who had been in the cartoon Man Revenge of the Animals, said, you should do a space movie. Thinking it's like I did all those cartoon special effects, so I was capable of doing some kind of low budget special effects. And then I just started throwing ideas around in my head, and just really quickly came up with, okay, if I did a space movie, what would I want to do? And just started, thinking of all kinds of. I mean, there's a little bit of every science fiction, a lot, trope in
Kind of
there.
spoofing on them, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So
So I mean, now we mentioned the low budget thing. Now you don't have the budget of say a Star Wars or a
yeah.
space movie like that. So I mean,
So yeah. So I went into Space People knowing it's like, it's like, all right, we can't even pretend this is gonna look like
right?
great. It's gonna look really cheesy. And so I just
Easy.
really leaned into that and just had the whole script just has a tongue-in-cheek sense of humor where it's like we don't do things where we like acknowledge that, we're in a cheap movie. Although, when we get to Earth, we have the people commenting on, these people can't be aliens. Just look at the outfits they're wearing, but it's like, we don't go so far as to break the fourth wall or anything, but it's like the whole thing is kind of based, but then it's like, we clearly have a low budget, but I still try to make it the best sci-fi adventure I could make in that budget. I mean, we like went into Boston for a couple days and have us walking around Boston in those spacesuits. And, I really, put a lot of effort, as much effort as I could at that point into.
People don't realize, even low budget, you're putting a lot of effort in. I think. Well, was it the spaceship scene? Wasn't it in your garage or something?
Yeah, the spaceship was in my garage.
I mean, I know it's only tinfoil and stuff, but that still had to take a while to put that together, even though it looks cheesy. I mean,
yeah, it was like,
must have been the project.
I think I was like working the whole week leading up to when we were filming. So it was really just the night before we filmed. I just had to like, all right, I have these panels. I'm just going to wrap these in foil, wrap this in foil. I'm like, all right, get some chairs in. Okay, I guess this is the best I can do. But then once you have the camera framed tight on it with all the actors in, and I've got a picture of it right there. Yeah, of course it doesn't look like a real spaceship, but
don't look like a garage either, right?
Suspend your disbelief and just buy into the universe of the movie. That's
part of a low budget film is you got to ask the audience to kind of play along, right?
Yeah.
Use your imagination a little bit and go with that. Okay, so you did the first one. What inspired the second one?
Well, it was, I think, much like what happened with the Cartoon Man. As I was making the first Space People, I was getting all kinds of ideas for things I could do with those same characters in a second one. So basically, as soon as the first Space People was done, my brain was just thinking up the storyline for the second one. And so, I didn't move forward with it right away. I waited, got the first one into the first festival it was in. But once I knew that, I think, Space People was I kind of generated more excitement for Space People than, anything I'd done up to that point.
Promoting it, right. Well, you're getting better each time.
Because I had more people involved with it.
Right.
Yeah, I had more people involved with it. It was just like, so, it seemed like there was definite interest in a Space People too, both from the cast and just people who knew us. So it was like, and also, on top of that, making a second Space People kind of enabled me to keep the excitement for the first one going. Because the first one was in a few festivals while we were shooting the second one. So it just sustained that hype for that one.
So what's it like when you see the people in the festivals giving you feedback on your movies? Does that create an audience for you? Do they still follow you, or?
Some people do. So the festivals I've screened at multiple times. I know there are a few people affiliated with those who have continued to
follow what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you had mentioned to me that a Space People 3 was in the work, but it kind of fell through. What made that fall through?
It was never really in the works. I came up with a storyline for it, but it got to the point where it was just going to be too hard to get enough of the cast together. And it's like, I could still do something, but it was just to do what I wanted to do and feel like it was a real continuation of the first two. I don't feel like I would necessarily be able to get all of the cast members back that I would want to have back.
Okay, they were burnt out at that point, yeah.
Yeah, or just a lot of things. I think some people, moved around, and some people kind of got tired of films. So it's just like, yeah, it's never say never, but
yeah.
But I was at least, unlike the Cartoon Man where I planned it as a trilogy, I kind of took the Space People films, one at a time. So I didn't have a whole thing mapped out. The Space People 2 ends in a way where it can, be the ending of the series. So yeah, it's like, I kind of have some stuff written for a third one, but I don't know, unless I could either get, a lot of the same people back, or, change enough of it that, or have it kind of go in a new direction. Because it would have, with new characters, I don't know.
You never say never, so we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, other than, being a writer or a director, you're acting in these films too, so you got somewhat of an acting career. But, what is it? Ghost versus Monster in 2017. Was that your project, or was that something you just
That was someone else's, yeah.
That was someone else's? Okay. What was it like being on someone else's film? You got to be respectful, but did the director and you come out and want to, say, do this, do that?
No, not really. Because, I think it's because I when I'm doing my own film, it's like know what I want to do. And I mean, I'm open to suggestions. I mean, sometimes people will have ideas and
You
be
are
like, oh,
very, I'll say that you're very easy to work with. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. But
yeah,
if it's someone else's film, I generally will defer to them and let them do it, the way they
it's their idea. Okay, yeah.
I mean, even
I remember the
working with,
first one I worked on was a Santa Claus one, and the guy was getting so upset because I wasn't doing exactly what he wanted to do. And I'm like, buddy, you're getting upset. Ain't gonna make it go any better. Just explain what you want. We'll try to get it done. So that was why when I hit you, you were easy to work with. That's why
yeah.
I kept in touch with you. Yeah. So, all right. So Dr. Trust, the Balboa Health Clinic, 2017. What was that all about?
Well, that was someone else's film. That was Jonathan Olson, Rolling Shutter Productions, short film that he did about just have a bunch of wacky characters in a hospital, and I played the lead character, Dr. Truscott, in that. It was a role that was similar to a lot of other parts that I'd played before. So it was just kind of like, I got the script and it was just like, yep, this is something I know how to do. So I'm just kind of a doctor who talks to the camera a lot
So
and
how
this
do
whole
you get in touch with these other people? How did you go about finding these other directors that are putting these films together?
It's basically just all through networking. It's just I have this
Yeah.
network of people who I've met, through, so I'll have a bunch of actors who will act in my films, and then they go and act in other films, and everybody, just meets each
Everybody knows
other. And so
somebody.
people will
Okay.
watch my films and see me and be like, oh, I want you to be in this, or can you help out, behind the scenes with that? Or it's just, yeah, everybody kind of just meets each other through all
Everybody
sorts of
knows
different
somebody.
things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Typo Squads, Words Can't Hurt You in 2019. What was that about?
Uh, that was um that was something I was really just kind of in the background of. That was Terry Killarney Trainer and Terry Trainer with Narrow Street Films. They did an adaptation, I think, of a book series by someone they knew. Stephen Lomer, I think, was his name. And they had a scene in a cafe. They needed a bunch of people to fill the background. They reached out to me, and a bunch of other people they knew. And so that's how it goes. It's people just reach out to people they know. And yeah.
And you're in. Okay.
Yep.
Well, I know I'd heard of this before you would work. Find out you worked on it. So, I mean, this is one of the more popular online series in New England, Paragons the TV series, which
Yeah.
ran 2015 to 2019. So, how did you get involved with that?
Yeah, Paragons, yeah. So that's it was a thing that, like, I met a lot of people through that, and a lot of people in New England have been involved with that. It was a 5-season web series by Sean Allen about EMTs and firefighters working at a fire station in New Hampshire. Basically, just like a mockumentary sitcom with where it would follow people at work and also the relationships between characters. I became involved with that about midway through the second season. Mike Weiner was one of the actors who was in it and who had worked with me on Suburban Spies and Revenge of the Animals. There was a day when they needed some actors to play parts and needed help with crew. He reached out to me. I got involved. It was just one of those things where I got along with everybody. So I helped out, I think, with one more episode of season 2. And then, Sean Allen, the creator of Paragons, helped me out behind the scenes with Space People a little bit. And then when they started season 3 in 2016, I ended up, being upgraded to part of the main group. I was, both behind the scenes and in front of the camera. I played a character who was the temporary chief of the fire department. I ended up writing some of the stuff for my own character in some of the other scenes, and edited a few of the episodes. So
Was it good to see your work appreciated? That they wanted you to do more on a film like that?
yeah, it's I always love being able to having stuff to do. It's if I
Good
don't
to be
have,
acknowledged. I mean, yeah, you put in the work. It's nice to get the acknowledgement when you
yeah,
put the work in, right? So that was good. So I guess that probably is the one of your biggest project I think you ever done was Firewood, the musical. Which I mean,
yeah,
you mentioned that taking on my movie was so many scenes. It's a big project. I mean, that was a real big project.
yeah.
What
That
was that
was
like pulling that off?
yeah, that was something that, yeah, bigger than any we imagined going into it. But that was, yeah, I guess it was as we were finishing Space People 2. Myself and Hannah Heckman McKenna, Ribbon Girl Hart, and Brian Niedermeyer were the other core people involved with that. We all kind of had an interest in making a musical at different points, and it came up, with they would be singing songs and be like, we should do a musical. And he had just the bare minimum of what we felt like we needed. I had the ability to make films, and then Brian was a composer who could write stuff, and Hannah was an award-winning actress, and Ribbon Girl was kind of organized everything in the early stages. So it's like, all right, we have the ability to do this, and so we just went into it, and it ended up taking 2.5 years to do, which we never anticipated. That was like, I think it was almost a year just getting the music done. We spent the whole summer, and I think we could have even spent longer on it. I think it would have gone differently if we'd known how long it was going to take. But yeah, just getting all the music recorded, and then filming it took that took like 6 months, because we only had really one location for that, but we had 20 something actors and a lot of just group scenes where we had to have all these people, and we'd have to be playing the songs back on set, and people would have to sing along to them.
So, now these other projects where you're the director, everything's in your control, what's in the final thing, but you had some musicians working on this where they were in charge of the music part, not you. So
yeah,
what was it like deferring to other people to?
It's like, well, I don't, yeah, it's like, I don't have the ability to like come up with, music. I wrote lyrics, but it's like, I'm not really a musician.
Right.
So, it was very nice to have them, so you started out with, Brian Eatermar was our initial guy, and then Renee Bergeron was initially one of our actors, but she ended up playing a big part in the music as well.
Was that tough for you, though, not being in control, the whole, like, having to rely on other people as opposed to just relying on yourself?
At times, especially after the fact. Well, it was fine, up until it got to the point where we realized, oh, wow, this is actually going to take a really long time. It ended up taking, over a year just to get the music done after we finished, filming. And that was, there was a point where it was like, how much, yeah, I don't know. It was frustrating to have to wait for them to get that done, and feeling like there was nothing I could do. But
sit there and wait, because there ain't much you can say.
Yeah, it's like I'm used to, because like on Space People, I'd be used to like, all right, I do everything. It's like, all right, we start filming, boom, boom, boom. I'm constantly working. It was like Choirwood. Even from the beginning, because I have the producing team, it would be like I finished a draft of the script, then I have to wait for everybody to read it. It was always kind of felt like I was waiting, and then even the production of it, the filming of it. Oftentimes, I would finish editing everything we had, and then we'd have to wait like a week or two to film some more stuff. So it was and it's just me. I like to constantly be working if I have a film.
Yeah, I'm like you. I like to go at it. Yeah, if I do it, I do it 100%, or I don't do it. But not everybody's like that. That's the tough part, right? All right. So currently, you just put out a I guess you did what, Apocalypse Party? Was that part of your short stories, or was that?
No, that was a standalone.
That was a standalone. Okay, so what was that like putting that out for you?
Yeah, that was well, I guess actually first, before that even, I did Lights Camera Terror, was a short film that I did during the wait for the music for Choirwood. And I had, that was just a quick short film, shot it in one weekend, or actually 2 weekends actually, but most of it was in one weekend. Got it done really quickly. And so then after Choirwood, was finally finished after 2.5 years, we premiered it summer 2019. I kind of just wanted to do another, really quick short film that I could get done quickly, because I'd been almost a year since I'd filmed anything. So Apocalypse Party was what I came up with to do that. And that was,
if everybody shows up that day, you're going to get a shot. If you got to do multiple days, then it kind of gets into scheduling and stuff, right?
So I put together a big group of the people who I had at that point, and just came up with a premise that allowed me to have a big cast. And yeah, we got that done in 2 weekends.
2 weekends. All right. So, let's see. Now here's one. I'm a big fan of this one you put out, which you didn't even tell anybody, but A Face You Won't Forget. I'll set we were during the pandemic and we couldn't be around anybody. And you want to talk about a genius way to figure out how to put out work without being around anybody. You hit it, but what made that idea come about for you?
That came about pretty much entirely because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It got to that point in March, April of 2020, where it was like, this is going to be going on for a while. No one knows how long it's going to be like this. Everyone's saying, don't, be around people as much as you can. So it's like, I can't have, people come to me. But I was at the point where, I really, I wanted to get a new film going. I needed something to keep myself busy. Like I said, I'm someone who always, wants to keep busy. So I just started kicking around, and it's like, could I do a film by myself? And, at first I'm almost thinking of a simple thing where it's just like me by myself. It's like, oh, but what if I played multiple characters? And that was another thing that I think started off as kind of a simple idea, but just as I had more and more ideas, the script kind of grew. And so basically I ended up making like a film that's over a half hour long, where the premise is it's, a film noir spoof in the 1930s with a private eye solving a mystery, but he suffers from a form of face blindness. So every face he sees looks the same. So I play every single character in this film. I play like 10 different characters. I do voices on the radio, and then there's photos of me. Everyone in this film is me. I shot the whole thing in my garage during, April and May of 2020, like right, during the weirdest part of the pandemic, right during the lockdown.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it was my way, it really just mostly my way of keeping myself occupied during that time. I feel like wasn't even thinking, no, I don't even care if anybody else watches this, but making this is just giving me something to work on.
Well, I do comedy, and stand-up comedy, and they say, if you want to get on TV, you can't go up and say, hey, I went to the coffee shop. It's been done 1,000 times. They're looking for something different. And I mean, you really pulled off something different where, I mean, the cartoon man, it was your own version, but it kind of reminded me of Roger Rabbit, kind of where they did like, the animation and that. I mean, Quirewood kind of reminded me of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest where it's been done, but I had never seen nothing like that done before. It was so different what you did to kind of make it stand out. When I said that was different, that stood out, that one to me. So for me, I mean, I thought that I'm a big fan of that one anyway. But did you enter that in some film festivals, or what did you ever do with that?
I know I didn't. I mean, it was mostly because at that point, like all the festivals were just like online anyway,
Yeah,
and
online events, right? Yeah.
and so I didn't have a lot of money at that point. It was just kind of like the whole idea behind that was that I'm going to make this. I'm not even going to tell anybody about it. I'm just going to, make this by myself. And then when the whole thing's done, I'm just going to drop it on YouTube and on Facebook and be like, hey, here's what I've been doing for the last few months. So that's what I did. And I was like, and I'm like making it. I'm like, I don't even know if anybody's going to watch this, but no, a lot of people,
a lot of people
I know watch
it.
it.
You got a following now where people are going to watch your work, whatever.
Yeah, I've got enough of a small following. Seems like mostly, my family and the actors who were in my other films and a few other people,
It's where you start right there. Yep. But all right, so next game, 2020 Taskville, A Quest for Knowledge. Are you a big video game buff, or what made that come about?
I mean, not a huge one. I mean, I have played games in the past. That was basically Taskville was like the next logical step from A Face You Won't Forget. So it was like we were still in the point where it's like we don't know how long this is going to last. I mean, I was as I was making the first film, and I was like, I don't know, I got to keep coming up with ideas because who knows how long this pandemic's going to go for and what the world is going to be like. So it was like, all right, I don't want the next one to just be me. I want to be able to do something where I can have other people in it, but not necessarily have to have us all get together because I don't know if we're going to be able to do that.
Right.
So, I knew, we have the technology where anybody can or at least record themselves with their phone and then send something to me. Yeah. So it was like, all right, so how do I justify the fact that, if people are sending me their own clips, the majority of it is just going to be people talking to their phone or whatever, or and it's like there's going to be varying quality between the different clips people are giving. So I felt like the obvious thing to do would be some kind of newscast or people having it be the pandemic and people talking to each other. And I wanted to do something different, and I just started thinking, back in the late 90s, there were some computer games where they were trying to really take advantage of the technology at the time, and they'd have live action video clips that you would interact with. And so I kind of came up with this whole premise where I go into somehow use some kind of technology that we never really explained fully to enter this late 90s computer game where I'm having to go up to people and interact with video clips of them. And so I was able to get I think it was 17 people send me clips, and about half of them were the characters in the game. Because I had people tell me, it's like, all right, once I had the cast, more or less lined up, I sent everybody an email being like, all right, what costumes do you have? What locations can you go to? And if anybody had some kind of cool costumes or location they could do, I'd all right, they'll be the characters in the game, but they'll be, I'll walk up to them wearing some kind of outlandish outfit. And then everybody else, the other people I gave a lot of lines to were the people who were people sitting at their computers with their camera on them, guiding me through this game that I'm going through.
Okay. Now I remember George Lucas said when he took a film class in college, and the first thing the teacher said was, "Get out of filmmaking because you're never going to do it." Because back then you had to have somebody in your family had to be a member of Hollywood because there was no equipment available to you. Now
Yeah.
later on, Steven Spielberg said nowadays they got video cameras that are comparable to what they're using in the movies. They got editing equipment comparable to
Yeah.
what they're using in the movies. Back then you needed to know somebody. Now you got an idea for a movie, what's stopping you from putting it out? So I mean,
Yeah.
somebody can send you some like average video footage, and you can put it in editing and really turn it into something spectacular, right? I mean, you showed that on the Cartoon Man in editing, and again in this film, I mean, you could like take people and put stuff around them and make it more elaborate than it actually is, right?
Yeah.
So do you
Yeah.
think more goes down in editing now, or I mean, where you can take average footage and turn it into something special in editing, or?
What do you mean? Like,
Well, I mean, like in the olden days, you had to wait for like the perfect sunlight or the perfect
oh yeah,
sunset.
yeah, that
Nowadays, you
absolutely. I
can
mean,
hit light
oh yeah,
dark. I mean, does that make it
yeah. I
easier
mean, it's
on you
like,
with the average footage?
yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely. I mean, editing is. I mean, that's there's more of the making of the movie takes place in editing than on set. When I'm
Yeah.
I think a lot. I mean, I think people who don't work in films don't necessarily even know how much goes into editing. Because I mean, I find that some people just think it's like, oh, you're just getting from the camera and act out the whole scene. And I mean, I think this would happen. In the film I was doing with you, where you had to explain to people, it's like, no, you don't have to get it exactly right the first time because I'm going to go back and forth. I'm going to get this character's angle, this
The best
character's
of
angle,
each.
and find the best version of each line and put it all together to make it look like everyone knows exactly what they're saying. And it's just
So that makes it a lot easier for you as a director to be able to have that
yeah,
power
it's
editing.
just
To
kind of mindset. It's like, all right, it's like I know I just need to get a good take, at least one or two good takes of every line, from each angle. And I'm thinking, as in terms of editing, when I'm filming.
all right. So as technology grows, I mean, you'll be able to do more and more, right? Because the technology
Yeah,
keeps getting
there's
better, right?
there's probably more I could be doing now. I'm still kind of doing things roughly the same way I was 10
Yeah.
years
Well, you
ago. It's
probably
like,
still don't know everything there is to know in
yeah,
that
it's there's
program,
yeah.
right?
I
Yeah.
mean, now people make whole movies up right on their phones. It's like
Yeah,
I
TikTok,
don't.
I know it's all taken off.
Yeah.
All right, so 2021, Tales of the Inexplicable. Take us to that. What was that like for you?
All right. So that was wrapping up Taskville. Now we're at the point where we could get people together. I think we'd started production on, your film, The World Needs a New Superhero at that point. I was
Uh,
involved with a couple other productions where was actually being on set with other people.
uh,
But, it was still at the point where it's like, we don't necessarily want to get huge groups of people together like I did with, Apocalypse Party Choirwood. So it started with a couple of scripts I already had, a couple of, short scripts I had with just like three characters at one location. So they all kind of have the same sort of dark comedy supernatural horror vibe to them. So I was like, what if I did like an anthology where I did like five films like this where they all have some kind of comedy horror type theme to it, and they're all just like three or four characters in one location. So I touched up a few scripts I already had so that they fit that format, and then wrote a couple new ones.
so it's like a collection of short films,
Yeah,
right?
it's a collection of short films. So I mean, there's
So I got everything
basically
I'll say it was Down the Clown, Death Mountain, Beware the Photo Bomber,
the
Bleeding Green,
yeah,
and Witch Flirtation, right?
So there's
Now, do
I
you
got
show these one after another, or how are you showing
yeah.
these?
So they all basically fit together. It starts out with me with some black and white footage of me with a voiceover talking about how I'm researching, trying to find evidence that supernatural things are happening. And so then it goes into the first one is Down to Clown, which is a film about Allie and Colin, who dealing with a clown doll that's possessed by a spirit and is causing all kinds of chaos. And so then that film ends and it goes back to black and white footage of me with a voiceover that sets it kind of like there's flips. So the whole thing works as a feature film, but it's made up of these five short films. And so then
Okay.
there's Road to Death Mountain, which is about a couple of people who go to this house. They get lost and they ask for directions to this house, and the people in there dress and act like they're from like the 1800s, and there's something weird going on there. And then there's Beware the Photo Bomber, where these people are looking at their vacation photos and they realize this weird guys in the background of all their pictures, and their friend is like tells them this whole story she read on the internet about how that means they're doomed. And then Bleeding Green is this guy's taking a cooking class, and then after a mishap he finds out that the woman teaching him is a shape-shifting lizard person. And then Witch Filtration is about a woman who tries to infiltrate a coven, who's undercover with a couple of witches. So yeah, these were all just ideas I had.
Now these are all scripts you came up with, right? All these
Yeah,
ideas that you wrote.
I wrote all of them myself. I mean, kind of, it was, treated it like.
So how long did filming go? I mean, that must have been quite the project. How long did it take to complete?
It ended up taking, I guess just under a year to get the whole thing done. We started shooting, I guess, right around this time last year was when we did Down to Clown, and then we wrapped Beware the Photo Bomber, which was the 5th one to be produced in like July, and I finished editing in August. And I mean, there were some gaps in between, because especially now it's like, we have people, oh, it's like people get a little sick and you don't want to do anything,
Right. All right, so let's give you a plug here. I mean, if people want to check you out or check out your work, what's your website? What, www.smokingbottlentertainment.com? Is that where they go?
Yep, Smoking Bottle Entertainment. Yeah, www.smokingbottlentertainment.com. And we've got a Facebook page, Smoking Bottle Entertainment. I have an Instagram where I'll post photos of whatever I'm doing.
Okay, and I know,
don't post.
You got a link on your website to where they can see all your stuff you've done, right?
Yeah, and there's a page on the Smoking Bottle Entertainment website where you can go, see everything. Everything's either on YouTube or Amazon, or the feature films, Space People Inquire what are on a couple of other streaming sites. So yeah.
All right, so YouTube, Amazon Prime, but I mean the home base would be your website, www.smokingbottlentertainment.com. Yep. How did you come up with the name Smoking Bottle Entertainment? What was this?
So that goes back to, I think I mentioned, back at the beginning of this, some of the films I did in high school that would be like a research project. So there was one that was, it was a project, I think it was, junior year in high school. Just we were learning in my history class about the 1920s and the Prohibition era, and so we got assigned this research project to research a bunch of topics about that period and present it in the form of a video. And so I just I came up with this film ended up being called The Smoking Bottle, which was this it was kind of similar to A Face You Won't Forget, actually, which drew some inspiration from it. It was kind of a film noir thing in black and white, where I'm a detective going around investigating Al Capone. And what kicks it off is, finding this empty beer bottle. And because it's the Prohibition, that's the smoking gun, it's the smoking bottle. And so that was just like, so I made that film in high school, and it was just for years.
It was a catchphrase that stuck.
Like that. That was like, it wasn't, it's not great. If you go back and watch, I don't think that's up on YouTube anymore, but it's not, great by any means. It's just, it's very,
it's memorable.
I mean, for a video project made in 2005, it's, probably
is what it is, right?
But it was just, for a long time, it was like, I felt like I wasn't having the opportunity to make films like the ones I wanted to up until like 2011, 2012. And it was just, that was the one I looked back on for so many years. It's like, I want to do more like this, So when I was coming up with something, it was like, I wanted to name it. It's like, let's name it Smoking Bottle Entertainment after that film.
Stuck ever since. All right. Yeah. So take us to, I mean, you're a director, you have your own style, but I mean, obviously, everybody's seen movies. I mean, is there a director out there, like a mainstream director, that you look at and say, wow, I really admire his work?
I don't know. It's hard.
Like a Scorsese or something like that, or I don't know.
I mean, when I was starting out, I mean, it was like, starting out, I think I was almost more influenced by like animated films than live action films. And people have said, I mean, literally with Cartoon Man, but people have said like my films were like live action cartoons, because I think it was watching like, Disney and Pixar films was where I kind of got my sense of rhythm and timing initially. I mean, but nowadays it's just, I mean, I feel like I'm watching movies and TV shows constantly. And I feel like to some extent I kind of absorb everything I'm watching, and then just it all kind of come.
Put it in the blender and I'll mix it up.
I'll be watching something, I'm like, oh, this kind of is, this is influenced by this thing, which I know I was watching right around the time I wrote that. And it's like, sometimes I don't even realize that I'm being influenced by something.
I think you mentioned that in Toy Stories, that inspired you. Toy Story movie inspired you for the jetpack scene or something you did in the Cartoon Man.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I watched like Toy Story 1 and 2 so many times when I was like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. So they really just kind of got embedded in my.
Stuck in your
I
head,
mean, I
right?
can show you there are scenes in every movie where I will just say a line the way that Woody or Buzz said something, and I didn't even mean to it. It's just that's like
So those are the movies that stuck in your head. As
yeah,
yeah,
I just watched
I
them that much at a
appreciate
very
that work.
impressionable age. So
Okay. So what are some of your favorite movies of all time? Mainstream movies. What give us your top three favorite movies of all time?
it's such a hard. I never know what to say when people say it like that. I mean, I think it's just like what we're saying. I
Yeah.
think there's so many that it's like I feel like the best. I don't know.
What's
It's
the
like
movie you've
I
seen the
never
most time?
really,
Like
I never
Star
really
Wars. I
think
must have
of.
seen Star Wars 100 times. I mean, what's a movie you've watched more than once because you appreciate it so much? I mean, what movie have
Um,
you said you've watched the most? I mean,
well, probably the Toy
Toy
Story
Story
movies
movie,
that
like
are
we
my
just said.
those are
Yeah.
the ones. And it's like I don't know. It's like are those? I mean, it's like and it's like even now it's like well, are those my favorites? I mean, it's like because there's nostalgia plays a big part in why I enjoy those so much and the fact that
Right.
they influenced me. So it's like and it's so hard to say what like because I don't really think. I'm not someone who watches something and it's like I file away. That is one of my favorite movies. It's like I'll be like I like this or I like that, and
They're all your babies for a different reason. Each one has
it's like
something
it's
special about
weird.
it.
It's
Yeah.
like yeah, I mean if you go and talk about like the specific films, I mean, if I go through like, if you went beat by beat through any of the films, I could be like, oh, okay, well, this scene was inspired by this thing. And it's like, but I don't even necessarily think of I have to, really dive in deep and like,
All right. Think about it. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Now,
I feel like I always give vague, like dodgy answers when people ask me what my favorite movies are,
well,
but
you're
it's
being
like,
honest. I mean,
it's
yeah,
not something I think about.
uh,
Yeah,
you appreciate something out of everything. All right.
yeah.
They say if you do what you love to do, you never work a day in your life. Okay, you're doing what you love to do. So to you, it's not even work; it's passion. But I mean, you've been going straight out. I think you just had your 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten burnt out on it and thought, "Hey, I need to take a break"? Or
Um, a couple times, I kind of, because I mean, like, going back, I said, Suburban Spies was like, real more stressful, and I, didn't really like the film I was making that much. I can remember working on that, thinking I might need a break after this because I don't know if I'm enjoying this anymore.
uh,
But then, I ended up having this. I think I wrote the script for Revenge of the Animals. I think before we had shot most of Suburban Spies. So I already had that script and I, mentioned that to some people. I was like, and they, liked it. I'm like, all right, I'll do one more. I'll do this film. I'll do Revenge of the Animals. And then after that, we'll see. But then I ended up enjoying Revenge of the Animals so much that once that was done, I wanted to do something
wanted
else
to
and then rolled right into Space People.
rekindle the fire.
Yeah. And then I
Okay.
think again, it was similar, like, when, we did, Choirwood and, that just, was taking so long to get done. It was, just kind of like, that was so exhausting. But then I did like Lights, Camera, Terror and got that done so fast. And I mean, I feel like, since then I've kind of just been doing shorter films to keep busy. There's a part of me that, I don't know, there's a part of me that simultaneously feels like I need a break. And then another part of me that just wants to do something
You don't want to
more
stop,
ambitious
yeah.
than
You
anything
want to,
I've
but
done.
it
It's like,
occupies your mind, gives you something to do, and you're
yeah.
doing what you love. Yeah, all right. So, we talked about how you got started. We talked about what you done. Short of Hollywood knocking on your door, what's in the future for Adam Griswold and Smoking Bottle Entertainment? What's in the future?
I'm really not even sure. I'm kind of
Good
at the point.
question.
I finished Tales of the Inexplicable. That's done. That's premiered. I'm maybe doing another private screening with the cast next month. But I'm thinking of ideas. I mean I have some things I've talked with some other people that I might be collaborating on soon. And on top of in addition to that, I have a few ideas. Um, but I'm not I can't
Totally
say for
sure on
sure.
a committed on a
I
project.
don't. Sometimes I'll be doing an interview like this, and I'll have something lined
Right,
up
right.
that that's filming in a few months. But right now,
No big
I'm
idea right now. Whatever happens,
yeah,
happens. Yeah.
yeah.
All
I've
right.
got a
Well, we
few
got The
ideas,
World
but
Needs a New Superhero you're working on. We're gonna get that out. We're gonna have fun
yeah,
with that
yeah.
one.
That's my focus right now is editing the rest of that. Yeah.
All right. So last question I got for you, Adam. Then we'll wrap this up. You got a long career ahead of you. You're 10 years in. I see you easily having another 10 years. If you had one big goal that you wanted to accomplish before it was all said and done, what's your number one goal that you want to accomplish in filmmaking?
That's
Good question.
It's like, it's like, I feel like I know, I'm like trying to think what, I mean, I know I have like, it's like, I feel like if I could take a few seconds to think, I could come up with something. I mean, it's like, I know it's, well, I mean, really, I'd like to come to the, I would really like to get to the point where, well, number one, I don't even know if it's possible, but to be able to make a living doing this, because right now, I'm not making
Right,
any
right,
money
right,
for filmmaking, and nobody who is involved in my films, is able to make any money. And if we
right.
could find a way that we all, could make a living doing this, that would be great. To be able to, whether it's to, be able to find people who can, fund it, give me a budget to make something, that would be
Not have to
that,
have a regular job on the side, just do what you
yeah,
love to
like
do, right?
that. And if it's even possible, because I know so many
I've heard
people,
that in comedy 1,000 times. Like, I just
I
do
know.
comedy. I don't have to be a big time comedian, but just get paid to do it and not have to work. I mean,
Yeah, and just that, and like, yeah, and yeah, I mean, really, just the ability to have more money. Because I mean, I'd love to be able to do things where it's like we fly out to some other part of the country and film stuff. If there was a justifiable reason why we couldn't just do something in New England, and just to
right.
be able to keep expanding the scope,
Elaborate
keep going
locations.
forward.
Yeah, just be
Yeah,
remembered for what you do, right? Just keep getting better,
yeah,
and have more people interested in what you're putting out. All right, I'll plug it again, www.smokingbottlentertainment.com. Go check out Adam Zork. Adam, thank you so much for being on Funny Like Clown podcast. I appreciate your time.
yeah. Thank you. Thanks for
Good
having
luck in
me.
the future, and I look forward to A World Needs a New Superhero. We're going to have
Yeah,
some fun.
yeah. That'll be very soon. You'll be able to see that.
All right, well, we'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, all right?
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.